You're by our side. You've never left. We thank you, Jesus. We trust you, God. God, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. Give me what to do. Lord, my strength. I rely on you, Lord, my shield. And I love you, Lord, my rock. Forever all my days, I will love you.
right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Birmingham Bible Church's Winning Wednesday. And we just want to start off by saying thank you for logging in today. If you're watching via Facebook or on YouTube, don't forget our YouTube is BHAM and make sure you subscribe to that channel. We are also on Twitter, which is BHAM Bible Church as well. We also have the My Sunday app, so you can watch that way as well. Or if you are not on social media, you can watch through our website. Of course, our website is bhambc.org. And then, of course, you will click the watch live button. Listen, make sure you share this broadcast. Make sure you get the word out because we have some really great information on today. Of course, we always like to use this time, like we always say, to inspire and to motivate. But today we are going to educate. As we used to say back in the day, we're going to get some education on the day. And so I'm excited about the information that our guest speaker is going to talk about on today. And so let me start off by saying, a couple of weeks ago, and we were all blessed as a country to celebrate our new holiday. So a lot of you who work for the government or work for banks, you had a day off this month. And of course, it was because of Juneteenth. Last year, President Joe Biden signed this act into law. And so now Juneteenth is a federal holiday. And so we all know that it celebrates the ending of slavery in the United States. And there were a lot of festivities going on. We had, picnics in the park and probably parades, and maybe some of you all attended some programs. But all that was done so that we can celebrate when we as a people became free. And so in honor of that, we wanted to bring somebody here locally from Birmingham. Birmingham is part of the civil rights movement. And so we have Mr. Charles Woods. He is from the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. And so I welcome him today on the broadcast. How are you doing, Mr. Charles?
I'm doing well. How is everything?
Everything is going well. Thank you again for dedicating your time to do this. Of course, I know it's probably been a busy month for you guys. You're probably always busy, but I know around these times and probably, in February, y'all are probably extremely busy. And so before we start this discussion, I did want you to introduce yourself and kind of tell us your role at the Civil Rights Institute here in Birmingham.
So I'm the education director and trainer at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Right now, new title change, and so, but still basically over majority of the educational programming coming out of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute.
Okay, and that's awesome. We need to be educated. And when I was early today, I was thinking, about the broadcast today, and as my husband and I are always planning for Winning Wednesdays and trying to make sure we have topics that are relevant to the people. And we were thinking, okay, it's June, we got to have somebody for Juneteenth, and we're thinking, oh, well, let's have it around Juneteenth. But schedules wouldn't allow that. But then I got to thinking this morning, I was like, this is a great time to have it because next week is the 4th of July. And a lot of people are celebrating the independence of America, and of course that was celebrated because back in 1776, the American colonists decided, we're going to be free from Great Britain, because as American colonists were actually shipping slave products to them, and then they were asking, England was asking, well, hey, you can buy from us at a higher price. And so the colonists were like, you know what, that's okay. We're going to cut the middleman out and we're going to be free from y'all, and we're going to profit and benefit from the products that our slaves make. And so, that's a time when the country celebrates independence, but African Americans weren't free until 100 years later. And so I want you to talk about that, talk about what Juneteenth means, and just everything that is surrounding it, how it got started, and you can go forth in your presentation on today.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and share my screen.
Okay. Make sure. Yes. Awesome. We see it.
Okay, good. Now, do you still see the presentation itself? Do you see my notes and everything too?
I know. I see. No, I see it. It's fine. It's great. I see
Okay.
the next slide, but that's good.
Okay, great. Okay, so just to kind of reiterate what you already mentioned, to really have this conversation about what is Juneteenth, or what I call America's oldest Black holiday. You have to go into the history of this country, and you've already mentioned it. We have July 4th, 1776. But one of the things that was on the question before ratification of what was going to be the Constitution, which was around 1787, the main debate was about slavery. The main debate was about, was this nation going to move forward as a slave nation, or were they going to kind of etch that part of that moral stain of this country, out of our history books? And we know the answer to that question, but one of the things that contributed to ultimately that answer being yes, we're going to move forward as being a slave nation was the creation of the cotton gin. Cotton gin revolutionized, and there were other gins before the cotton gin. Let me say that. So the cotton gin of Eli Whitney wasn't something new that people had seen. It was just a mechanical evolution that they had not seen yet. And so the cotton gin was able to take what was, enslaved Africans had to pick about 500 pounds of cotton a day. And cotton is already a light substance. And so it took those 500 pounds per person that you were able to process within a week from to almost triple what you were able to process cotton wise. And the country could not just say no to all that money that they saw, on the table. And so whereas other European nations were completely abolishing slavery in all of their colonies and in their nations, the United States decided to abolish the importation of slaves in 1808. And so just to kind of talk a little bit about how, important the slave economy was on this nation. This is the reason why the United States of America became a world power in just about the shortest amount of time than any other major world power. They did it off the land of, natives who basically, they signed treaties and and did some shady things to get that land. And they also built this nation on the backs of enslaved Africans. And when you get into the jobs that these enslaved Africans were doing, they literally, when we say we built this country, it is a literal stance, because we did everything to build the infrastructure of what became everything in this nation. And so I just had to say that really quickly. But to talk about, moving forward in history, several years, but to start talking about who Abraham Lincoln was and what he was trying to instill with the Emancipation Proclamation, which the Emancipation Proclamation was written and given as a speech, or ultimately became an executive order by Abraham Lincoln in 1862. And so this is in the thick of the Civil War. This is in the middle of, literally Americans losing their lives over this this issue that, we live here in the South. We always hear the idea of what slave rights is or was, and it's still coming up today. But this idea of what the Civil War was about, it was about slavery. I mean, people say states' rights. Yeah, states' rights to conduct the institution of slavery, and shadow slavery at that. And so what Abraham Lincoln ultimately wanted to do was disrupt what was happening in the Confederacy, and then also maintain the Union. His goal was always to maintain the Union. It was not to put the black man, and this is one of his quotes, to put the black man on equal footing with the white man in every way, was not his idea. Okay, his idea was to disrupt what was going on in the Confederacy and to also maintain the Union, because the Emancipation Proclamation did not apply to two states that were under Union control. That was Kentucky and Delaware. Those what we consider were border states, and those states were always kind of in question about were they going to move forward as slave states or territories or not. And so when the Emancipation Proclamation came down, those two states were not affected in any way. So they were union. Let me reiterate: they were union controlled, enslaved Africans, even after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and ratified. Okay. And so when we talk about Juneteenth, we have to talk about emancipation. Emancipation was that thing that, like I said before, disrupted what was going on in the South and freed those enslaved Africans in the South. A lot of those enslaved Africans in the South, once freed and fled their plantations and other places, wanted to join the Union Army to fight against the Confederacy. Many did, but there were not many regiments or all Black regiments that we like to talk about. So this is the 54th Regiment out of Massachusetts. This is the movie that Glory was all about. It was a white-led, all-Black Union Army regiment. And one thing I like to say, and I say I like to say it, but it's a fact, and I love speaking on facts. African Americans fought in every war that this country has ever had, and a lot of times on both sides. And so we fought on the sides of the revolutionaries when they were promising us freedom to get out from under British control. But we also fought on the side of the British, who were promising us the same thing: you'll get your freedom once we win this war here in these new colonies. Same thing with the Civil War. People think that there were no Black people fought on the side of the Confederacy. That is not correct. We fought on both sides of that war as well, and that we fought in every war that this country has ever had. And so even the idea of what became Memorial Day was something that evolved out of African Americans honoring soldiers, their soldiers who fought in wars throughout this nation, but most definitely when they fought in the Civil War. And so I just love this picture of the 54th Regiment. But when it came to emancipation, the Emancipation Proclamation was written and given in 1862, and it went into effect on July 1st, 1863. And so the original days that African Americans celebrated as Freedom Day, or what we know as Freedom Days or Jubilee Days, were actually January 1st. They were also what evolved into New Year's Days as well for us. After enslaved Africans received the thought of their freedom coming from these Union soldiers in the middle of the Civil War, this is 1863, telling them that they're free, a lot of them left their plantations in search of family members. And so this is also the precursor to what ultimately became Black family reunions, who were also really conjoined with what became Freedom Days as well. Rejoining the family was a very serious and important thing for African Americans, period, that were involved in this enslavement, because it was one of the main reasons for enslavement, I feel personally, I'm not gonna put that on anybody else, was to disrupt the Black family on a global scale. And on a global scale, and see, and the type of slavery that occurred in the United States of America, which made it, I mean, and this happened in other parts of the New World as well, but made it generational, made it only on one demographic of the population, and the brutality of it disrupted not only the Black family, but the Black mental state. So when we talk about mental health now, or what Dr. DeRoy talks about in her book with post-traumatic slave syndrome or disorder, these are generational non-treated traumas that are passed on, and we're still dealing with these things today. And so I just said that, though, to show that there's a scaffolding on this history on more levels than just, now we get to have a day off, which is great. We do get to have a day off, but this goes in a little deeper to what things were. So the first Freedom Days, the first fun celebrations that African Americans were participating in were called Jubilee Days or Freedom Days, and those were occurring on January 1st. So those were the first days that people were celebrating. And to say that was going on before what we know is Juneteenth is maybe a little, shaky historic wise. This is the time period when these people were trying to rebuild their lives. They're trying to find family members. They're trying to get some land. They're trying to do something to maintain themselves, because one of the issues, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, is that one of the issues that made African Americans want to start empowering themselves is that during Reconstruction, once the Civil War was over, we had very high participation in our civic duties in this country. And one of those things that we wanted to do was we wanted to own land, we wanted to have businesses, and we kind of wanted to live that American dream. And so I kind of got to go forward to go back a little bit, but so Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect January 1st, 1863. You have African Americans from the South that are now leaving their plantations, moving towards North, looking in search of other family members, spreading the word, because everybody didn't know what was going on, so they're going around and spreading the word at other plantations and letting people know that you can leave. Now, even when you read the Emancipation Proclamation, it's still advocated for these newly freed individuals to stay on these plantations and work the land, but now seek a wage. Okay. And so even when we read this excerpt of what General Granger did with ultimately what became known as Juneteenth, it was the same thing. So the state of Texas during this time period was considered like one of the most remote areas of the nation. It was so far away from what people considered, to be, you can go back to think about the 13 colonies and then other states that kind of ratified. They're all kind of in the same kind of northeastern, southeastern area. And Texas was considered really far remote. And so it was also one of those places that people would ship their slaves or their enslaved individuals to let's say like you use one of your enslaved individuals as collateral for a loan, and now those people are coming in search of, you default on that loan, now they're coming in search of that collateral to pay for that loan. A lot of times enslaved individuals were used as collateral and things of that nature, and so they were very intertwined in the banking and the economic system of this country. And so a lot of times people would use Texas as that place to send that remote far area to send their goods to, it's like somebody trying to avoid their car being repossessed, and they go through all these measures to keep that from happening. Well, that's what Texas was also. It was that place that you could send your enslaved individuals to elude them being repossessed or taken as that collateral for that loan. And so the case of Juneteenth is similar to some of those things, is that it took almost 2.5 years before the last remaining enslaved individuals received word that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed and passed and ratified. And so a lot of people question, well, why did it take so long? And so when I use the idea of it being remote as one of those reasons why it took so long, it was just kind of far, it took a long time to get out there. But there are also several myths and other attempts at explaining why it took so long. Galveston, Texas, at one of the southernmost tips of Texas, and this is where this took place. It's also an island off the coast of Texas. But there are a lot of attempts at trying to explain what took so long. One of the attempts is that there was a messenger that was sent from the Union Army that was intercepted at some point and never made it to its final destination with the order that these enslaved individuals in this part of the country, which is also part of the South, are free as well. So that's one theory. I don't want to say theory, my wife's gonna get mad. That's one hypothesis. Another hypothesis is that the news was deliberately withheld from slave owners who wanted to get a couple of more harvests out of the enslaved individuals before they had the option to leave the plantation. One of the other hypotheses that's very similar to that one is that the Union Army was cognizant that Mexico was buying cotton from Texas at a different rate or at a higher rate as well, and that the Union Army purposefully withheld that information or withheld getting that information to Texas so that the Union Army could capitalize on another harvest or two. And so, all of those all of those theories, behind ultimately General Granger was able to make it to Galveston, Texas, and he read General Order Number 3, which basically said that the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired laborer. Okay, so even then they're still trying to nudge this like, hey, now even though that you're free, now you still have to work, you need to work for a wage, and so the best place for you to work for a wage is where you were previously employed, right? Or the lack thereof. And so that's ultimately what Juneteenth was. And that happened on June the 19th, 1865. And so they combined the word June and the word teenth from 19th to create this word known as Juneteenth. And so after emancipation, after which the Civil War ended in the April, early May of 1865. And so look, let's rationalize that a little bit. Civil War is over May 1865, the whole war. But these people don't find out what's going on until June of 1865. And so the war is over, but they're still functioning as enslaved individuals until this order comes down in June of the Union Army, making it to some of these most remote areas and letting these enslaved individuals know, like, hey, y'all are free too. Okay. And that's a Texas thing, though. And that's another thing that people don't understand. Juneteenth really was a Texas themed Jubilee Day, because there were Jubilee days possibly going on in other parts of the South prior to what we know as Juneteenth, because it was a day celebrating emancipation. Yeah. And so even though we know what Juneteenth is now, that's really fueling the idea of what emancipation days were. Did you have a question? Yes.
Yeah, I did. I had a question about the Jubilee days. And you can, let me know if this is anywhere correct. I heard that watch night, Black churches, we celebrate watch night, churches get together and we have service. Originally, wasn't that because of if anybody was going to be sold, it would have been sold on that day. And so New Year's Day was a time they celebrated if they were all able to stay together. Is that correct?
And so I've heard something like that. I haven't been able to substantiate it with documentation or anything that I've read. Yeah. But from the oral histories that I've heard, especially now in the South, because I'm not originally from Alabama. Okay. But I really pay attention to when my elders speak. Yeah. And I gave the same presentation not too long ago, and that was one of the things that one of the elders stood out and said, you know what, now it makes sense to me that watch night or watch day and Jubilee days coincided in some kind of way.
Right.
And that's what I'm understanding as well, because even later on, Black Baptist churches, we would go to church on New Year's, right? New Year's Eve, and spend that time at the church. I also understand that in some instances that also became a way for Black neighborhoods and Black communities to gather together, not only to celebrate, but also to protect themselves. A lot of times during New Year's, so this is also where the idea of, I guess, shooting guns in the air on New Year's come from, but those New Year's nights or those New Year's Eve nights or whatever were also times where the KKK and other white supremacy organizations would go around and terrorize Black neighborhoods. And so we would gather together in these churches, not only for, service and fellowship and those things, but also because that was a place where we could all be together at once to protect ourselves at one time as well. And so, the watch nights and Jubilee days are very, very closely associated. And that's something that I'm learning now that I will do some additional research about.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So once these enslaved Africans are now free, you have the 13th, the 14th, and 15th Amendments that are the Reconstruction Amendments passed. You have the Union Army still in control of the South. This is when African Americans got involved in their civic duties and their civic engagement politically, trying to own land, starting businesses, and also joining the armed forces. This is a picture of what's known as the Buffalo Soldiers. Buffalo Soldiers were the 9th and 10th Cavalry's, 9th and 10th Cavalry's, the 24th and 25th Infantries. And they use these African-American soldiers, these Black soldiers, to deal with what they called with the Indian problem. They were utilized to expand the United States to the West, all the way out to where I'm from, California, Oregon, Washington, and other places. And in doing that, you had to displace a lot of Native Americans throughout that area. And these Black soldiers were utilized to do that. And in doing that, the natives gave them some say it's a badge of honor, some say it's a spiritual thing, but they called them Buffalo Soldiers. Some say because their hair was similar. I've heard all kinds of reasonings why. Some say, and I say this, but this is I've heard this very few times. The buffalo was very sacred to Native Americans, but it was also something that they wanted to kill. And so maybe that had something to do with it, because this was their foe, as these American soldiers basically clearing Native Americans off their land. But they were dubbed Buffalo Soldiers. Some say because they were fierce fighters, as the buffalo was also a fierce opponent. But African American wanted to serve. We wanted to live the American dream, and we wanted to show our worth as citizens of this nation. And so this is also when, like I said before, we were civically engaged, but we were also building communities, starting businesses. Schools started to erupt, HBCUs and other schools, because African Americans weren't allowed into other predominantly white institutions. This is when we're being most engaged. This is from about 1866 to about 1877. 1877 is known as the Great Compromise. This is when Rutherford B. Hayes, running for president, loses the Electoral College but wins the popular vote, goes all the way to the Senate. The Senate gets to decide through a vote who is going to become the president. So Rutherford B. Hayes petitions to the Southern senators that if you allow me to become president, I will end Reconstruction and basically allow you to go back to dealing with your Negroes how you feel. Ultimately, that is what occurred. And in order for the Southern states that had ceded from the Union to be joined back into the Union or the United States, they all had to rewrite their constitutions, as well as ratify the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. I just found out that states like, I believe it was Mississippi, did not fully ratify one of those amendments. I'm not sure which one. I want to say it's the 13th, which is the one that abolishes slavery, until like 1990 something or 1980 something. It's something crazy like that. So don't quote me on that, but y'all Google that. When did the last Southern states ratify the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to fully become back into the Union? But one thing they did have to do was rewrite their constitutions. And majority of these states rewrote their constitutions in the late 1890s, early 1900s. State of Alabama rewrote theirs in 1901. And with that constitution also had all of the Black codes and Jim Crow laws established to disenfranchise African Americans, and just really to make their lives just harder than it really necessarily needed to be. And And then you also have a lot of, de facto things that happen in states like Alabama too, that just were, ways to keep African Americans in their place, so to speak. And so, this is the time period though that you see African Americans really becoming what they thought, what I say white supremacists and others thought was a threat. This is when Black people are trying to own land, and they're becoming they're utilizing their political participation. And so this is when these constitutions were rewritten to keep African Americans from being able to really see what's known as the American dream. And so this is the time period where after World War One, you see African Americans coming back from serving their country, being lynched in their uniforms. In the early 19-teens, 1920s, this is where you start seeing things like the Tulsa massacre and other thriving Black self-dependent communities being burned to the ground. New information recently has said that places like Lake Martin and Lake Gunnersville are actually lakes that were built upon Black communities that were destroyed and then flooded out. Same with, I can't think of the name of that lake outside of Atlanta. But several of these places, things like this were occurring because this is when Black people were empowering themselves despite the Jim Crow laws and the Black codes that were all around them, keeping them from being able to vote and exercise those other parts of their lives. But this is where Black people came together, and this is where these Emancipation Days, Juneteenth especially, started to pop up in other parts of the country, not only just Texas. And these were celebrations, these were fun times, these were barbecues, these were parades, these were family reunions. A lot of times they started these days with reading the Emancipation Proclamation. This is where Black people came out in their best dressed clothing and showed out. And I think a lot of times this showing out, this celebration, led to some jealousy, led to some other things that ultimately caused these massacres and this white violence to happen to these communities as they're just, trying to live and show off. These Jim Crow laws and Black codes and things try to limit citizenship participation. And this is when maybe Independence Day or the 4th of July is maybe not looking like the best celebratory day for African Americans, right? This is when some of the information, later on in the late 60s and things, as the Black Power era starts to surface, you start to see information about, like the 2 states that I was telling about with the Emancipation Proclamation and other things that say that, maybe some of these dates that we represent as Americans maybe don't serve the purpose for all Americans. And even some people are, they understand that. Some even some white allies and things of that nature understand that. And they see that, we have to start being better with telling a full narrative of the things that happen in this country, in this nation. And so I just like to show this little slide right here. When I originally put this presentation together, Juneteenth was not a national holiday, okay? It was not a national holiday. And then Alabama just recently, ratified Juneteenth as a state holiday as well. And so these things were not around, but, this is a slide that I took from another presentation that I call Hokey Pokey. And I say it's a little hokey pokey going on because the state capitol here in the state of Alabama is really a Confederate monument in of itself. And we've been talking about, Confederate monuments and things coming down for the last few years. And if you go to the state capitol here in Alabama and Montgomery, you see these signs and these plaques and these things signifying when Jefferson Davis gave the inaugural address to the Confederate States of America. When he died, his body laid in wait in the state capitol here at Alabama. That was, at one point the capital of the Confederacy. You had the United Daughters of the Confederacy instilling plaques and all types of other things throughout. the state capitol here in Alabama. And so, and even the structure of the state capitol has a picture of Robert E. Lee on a horse in the main structure as you walk in at the top. And so, I just had brought that up. Jefferson Davis Day is still on the books here in the state of Alabama. It is June the 1st, as well as Robert E. Lee Day that serves that shares the same holiday as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And so, how long have those holidays been on the books, especially in a state like Alabama? And we're just now starting to have a holiday that reflects the history of this nation, that is really a stain on what occurred here. And so one of the things I really talk about real quick is, what does Juneteenth celebration look like? What are some of the traditions? And some of these things I can't explain to you why at all. You might have to ask somebody from Texas, somebody that's maybe been in the game longer than me. But I know that most times these Jubilee days or Emancipation days or Juneteenth, as we know them to be today, you always usually start off with some African drumming and some dancing or some other traditions to show our connection back to the motherland. That is something that, and I see the flag behind you, Ms. Mason, but the red, black, and green being the flag of the African diaspora, and you see those things being waved as honoring our connection to Africa, but also to other peoples who were kidnapped, enslaved in other parts of the world, and then also to honor our indigenous populations of other parts of the world. Black people are indigenous people of this planet as well. And so a lot of times I've been seeing on social media and stuff that people have been talking about, why do we see red, black, and green on these Jubilee days or these Juneteenth days? Because that's our flag. And for a long time, that's the only flag that Black people could wave proudly and have honor behind. The efforts of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and his efforts to unite African people worldwide. And so for a long time, that's the only flag that we could wave really truly and feel power and honor behind. Now the Juneteenth flag is a red, black, and green. It's a red, white, and blue flag with a star on the inside with a little, Jubilee kind of going on around it. And it does honor our connection as citizens of this nation and also the people that built this country. And so I'm not hating on any one flag. I'm just a little impartial personally to the Pan-African flag. That's the flag that I fly, and that I put my honor and pride behind as well. But so you would see the Pan-African flag at these celebrations. There's a lot of barbecue going on, great food. Red drink is a tradition as well as red food. Eating a watermelon used to be a tradition, but you see that eating a watermelon being some type of a stereotypical designation nowadays. So you may not see that as much, but these were some of the original traditions of what Juneteenth ultimately became. Eating black-eyed peas. Now that's a that's a Jubilee thing as well. That's a New Year's thing as well. Something I learned with some family in the South. But do you see things different ways depending on where you went? When I was very young, it's a town in Central California, a very old Black-based town called, I want to say it's called Allensworth or Allenstown or something like that. And my mom would drive from Southern California. We would drive up to Central California to this old kind of ghost town now, but was an original all black settlement in the state of California. They would have a wonderful Juneteenth celebration. And a lot of times this was my introduction into what Juneteenth was. It wasn't until I became a little older that I understood that it was not just a Emancipation Day for everybody, that it has roots in a particular state and that kind of evolved into something else. And so now, people are a little more curious about the history of Juneteenth and where it came from and really where we're going with it. And so this past Juneteenth, we had an excellent celebration here at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Vendors, we fed people. You had vendors, we had music performers. Like, it was just a wonderful day. And then that Monday, a lot of people were able to celebrate the official holiday on that Monday. And so one of the questions that I get is, how can you celebrate or ways to get involved? Yes, it's true. We are past Juneteenth right now. But on our website, bcri.org, you can see some of the things that we did in our Juneteenth celebration, but also on the National African American Museum of History and Culture, the Washington D. Museum, the big one. this link right here, and I'm gonna see if I might be able to put it in the chat. But this link is also a Juneteenth toolkit that they had, where they had excellent opportunities to read reading materials, different books and things you can learn about Juneteenth, as well as crafts and some other things that you can do with your young folks to highlight this now not national holiday, signifying the one of the final emancipations of Africans in this country, or enslaved Africans in this country. And I have to say one of, because the more you get into this history and you learn things, there were individuals after Juneteenth who were still enslaved as well. Case in point, information that's come down saying that during the Trail of Tears, when these Native Americans were being moved off of their land and taken to Oklahoma to reservations, that they had enslaved individuals in tow as well. And that those enslaved individuals didn't receive their freedom until basically the government kind of forced their hand after what we know as Juneteenth. And then we also know that the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, but has a clause in it that says, unless punishable by a crime. And we know that a system called convict leasing evolved out of that. And that wasn't eradicated, or so they say eradicated, until 1954, 55. And so, educate yourself, inform yourself. Anything I said that, don't believe me, go check it out. And then also stay, connected to institutions that you trust, that you see the work that we're doing, and help support us in any way. So, I implore everyone to go to www.bcri.org if you want to donate to help educational programs, not only like what you see today, but other things that we have doing with our early literacy with youth, high school age, and then also just our general public program. So thank you. Any questions? I love to answer questions. So.
Oh, man, Charles, this was great. I am in awe of I didn't know a lot of the stuff that you were talking about, because they don't teach you. I'm over 40, so I'm gonna say I'm over 40. And so when I was in school, they didn't teach about any of this. I didn't know that family reunions, that it generated from everybody getting together, because everybody had been sold and separated. And so now we come together, we know, who your cousin is and your aunt, and this is your grandma. And I didn't know the history behind that. And even Memorial Day, I didn't know we started that. I had no idea. And I'm amped up. I'm about to be amped up right now. But because our daughter was saying that they were trying to get teachers not to talk about certain things. It hasn't been enforced yet, I guess. It hasn't been passed through it's not a bill, but everybody needs to know this history, because a lot of times there are people who want us to forget it. They want us to, let's just sweep it on the rug and, let's just move on. But a lot of things were stolen. A lot of things I didn't know. So now that you mentioned that about Glory, the movie Denzel was in, I'm gonna have to go watch it. I didn't know that was the history behind that.
Yeah. It's kind of a one of those white savior kind of situations that you see in Black movies sometime, where they're kind of giving one side of what the story could ultimately have been. But
yeah, no, you did a great job. That was one thing I was going to ask about. How can we get involved? And you're right, educating yourselves. They're not teaching it in the school. So I know my husband and I, we take our kids to the library, and I say, I know you required to read books. I say you need to get at least one book that's about Black history. Because a lot of times, they don't teach it in school, so they don't know. And so we don't know from whence we come. And so we don't know why people are still fighting to make sure that, they're not going to try to suppress our
Right.
votes, and they're not trying to, do things underhandedly, because you talk
Mhm.
about that, they would try to do things
Yeah.
to, keep you enslaved.
Mhm.
And so this was a great presentation. Listen, everybody, make sure you go to bcri.org. And I know we took our church there. Every February, we take our church as a whole, we go somewhere. And one year we did go to the Birmingham Civil Rights Museum. I hadn't been there in
Mhm.
ages, and was just, dumbfounded by just everything. And so it is a great exhibit. I hadn't been there in about 3 years or so,
Okay.
but we're gonna have to go back, bring our children back. But this was great information. We're going to have you back for some, at least I think in the month of February, because there's some other things that
Oh
we
yeah.
just don't know about as a people. And I know
Mhm.
you were trying to cover, it's just so much. And you were trying to cover, certain things, but I was like, man, I want to know more about that. But yeah, but this was great. So thank you so much. Listen, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do just a couple of announcements.
Okay.
So could you have you
Stop
stop
share.
sharing?
Mhm.
Yeah, just for a minute, and
Mhm.
then get our people in on this one. Hold on one second. But this was great. When I bring you back, I do want you to talk about, just kind of sum it up, and just let our people know, hey, this is how you can get involved. This is what's going on when we come back in just a second. All right. Okay, well, everyone, let me go to this one. So you just heard from Charles Woods on today, talking about the meaning of Juneteenth. Great information. We've had some great speakers all month long. So listen, make sure you go back and watch it. Make sure you visit, even if you're not living in Birmingham, visit some type of educational facility. We went to Lorraine Motel. That was very educational, so that you can continue to empower yourselves and the next generation. For all of you who are part of our small group, don't forget we are meeting this Saturday. Our curriculum is financial fitness. Of course, this is a private Zoom. So if you haven't been a part of it, please send us an email at smallgroups@bhambc.org. That is smallgroups@bhambc.org. For those of you who are a part of it, you already know that we're going to send you a reminder that we are meeting this Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m. Also, our summer reading program for all of our children 12 years and under, that's still in effect. We're going to end it July 31st. The person who reads the most books in certain age group categories, you're going to get cash money prizes. So go to our website, bhambc.org. You will actually go to a web slider that looks like the flyer before you. Click on it. After you have read a book, you have to submit a summary, because we want to make sure, keeping everybody on the up and up, and just make sure you understood what you read. But listen, because of today, let's make sure that we are reading something pertaining to our history. So make sure you include that as well. But once you hit that submit button, it's going to go to our team, and they will make sure that it gets counted toward the many books that you are going to read this summer. Don't forget, we are on oneplace.com. Great way to continue to hear great teachings from Pastor Mason on the go. And so you would go to oneplace.com, do a search for his name, Dr. James H. Mason III, and then you will see all of his messages that are archived. Don't forget, our prayer room call is every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 a.m. That number is 727-731-0433. Also, as a reminder, we're having our in-person service this Sunday. Our in-person service is this Sunday at C.W. Hayes School. We hope to see you there. We're going to be there at 10 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to have some, don't forget, we're giving out free diapers on that day. We're having a celebration. So someone's being baptized. We're having a baby dedication. We're going to give out some good old cookout food. And so make sure you join us on Sunday. We'll still be, on social media, but to get the full effect, and so we can be in union with all of our brothers and sisters, let's come on out on Sunday at C.W. Hayes School, and we hope to, of course, see you then. But that's all I have for today. Charles, would you like to end with just any type of, just kind of sum it up, give us some takeaways about today and something, anything we need to do, even on a personal level, to educate us, and or you could talk about the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just excuse me, I'll just kind of play it towards the institute as a whole. The Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, we're celebrating our 30th year anniversary this year. And so in November, we'll have some BCRI birthday things going on. And I just implore everyone to just stay connected to the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, www.bcri.org. And we are BHAM Civil Rights on all of our social media handles. And so programming, similar to what you kind of heard today virtually, will be on our Facebook and YouTube social media platforms. And so you kind of hinted a little bit at CRT, or what I call anti-CRT legislation that has come down in a lot of states recently, as they are trying to manipulate or change the narrative of what is true history in this country, based off of the comfort of students. We all know that, your comfort has to be challenged for you to grow. Right. And we know that for you to really be really strong components of this society and this world, you have to be able to think critically. And so they took something that was thinking critically about how race is conducted and talked about and utilized in this country, a lot of times in a negative fashion. They took that idea of exposing that, racism or things that, or how race is utilized in a negative fashion in this country, to make it sound like we're going to teach, or that children are being taught falsehoods in their K-12 classrooms. That is not true. We know that critical race theory is nowhere in any K-12 classroom in this country.
Right.
But they utilize that as a political scheme to be able to win elections. And so we have an excellent conversation with some Harvard students on our social media pages talking about critical race theory. We also have some other conversations talking about critical race theory and how it looks in the diversity, equity, and inclusion industry in the corporate world. And so, educate yourself, check out some of these things, read some books. I don't want to say it like that, but if you're in Birmingham, come down to the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. We have an excellent bookstore. And come get some of these things and educate yourself, and then educate someone else once you feel like you're to a point where you can discuss these things.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Charles. We appreciate your time, volunteering your time. Listen, everybody, go check it out. I did put it in the Facebook and the YouTube comment section, bcri.org. Go down there. Make sure you go so we can donate towards the facility. Yes. And also there's the website is the same as well. I've been on the website checking stuff out. But yes, let's do that and let's educate ourselves. Thank you so much, Charles. We will see you next time.
All right.
Love it. All right.